Jepang, di apa ya, kira-kira tahun 1930-an ke 40-an itu khususnya kemarin saya apa ya mengintroduksikan Japanese animation in the beginning. Satunya itu yang pertama itu 1928. Itu just based on the original Momotaro story. And secondly, I have just introduced you that sorry in English, maaf. Dan kadang-kadang bercampur bahasa Indonesianya. Dan kemarin itu Momotaro-nya itu yang asli sangat very naive and friendly figure in line with the Japanese old folktale. But since the Meiji period, Japan decided to open the door to the foreign countries and just decided just get out from Asia and masuk Eropa. It's or usually called that's a new war, and the national policy is just Fukoku Kyohei, a rich nation, strong army. And in line with that process, Momotaro just changed his style to adjust the Japanese national policy orientation to modernization and just trying to get and catch up the Western colonial powers like this one. And today, firstly, I want to introduce in this occasion, it's I think this Bigot is just a French artist and cartoonist just coming to Asian countries and also to Japan to stay in the end of the 19th centuries and just experienced and so many cartoons he painted and sent to Europe and also published in Japan, especially for the foreign people who stayed in Meiji Japan. And you see, this Bigot is just was the French painters and cartoonist, and he just look the international environment and the situation in the end of the 19th centuries in Japan, and also just shedding light on that, how the Japanese tried to join like this. It's how can I say, it would be possible. It's the Japanese tried to become honorable white or Meiyo-hakuji. And the Bigot is as a French cartoonist, very severe critics to the Japanese national policy and look at the Japanese government and like this. And this also just reflecting the early 20th century. And this just, I think it's Japan in the post-Sino-Japanese War world I have just mentioned. As you see, it's loose. Japan opened the door to the foreign country in the end of the Tokugawa period. And with the beginning of the Meiji period, Japan decided to shake hands with the British. And as a junior partner of Pax Britannica, and behind the young little kid soldier is just appeared the British general and said, it's just Vigo mentioned, Old England, Japan, this title. And I'm here for backup. Do not be afraid. His broke head. It's just symbolizing the Russian and British and the young Japanese and German generals and French also just looking at the situation on the eve of the Russo-Japanese War, just after the Sino-Japanese War. And this also indicating the situations just reflected who will have the rearing the child. Child means the Korean nation. This directly reflected the international situations in the early 20th century in East Asia. And this also, this I think in the textbook in Japan for the junior high school students, and also in high school textbook, this cartoon is so famous. And this one is a so famous cartoon and become so popular in Japan. But unfortunately, many Japanese youth don't like history. So it's so problem. Like me as a historian, how should we do for the young kids to appear such kind of maybe I think it's such kind of the cartoon is, in my opinion, it's so useful. And I hope today I will introduce other cartoon and films. Maybe it would contribute to the young generations, especially in Indonesia and also in Japan. I hope such kind of the efforts to use these materials officially teachers didn't want to use such kind of the subcultures. But I think it's from now on, I want to introduce and promote to the public in Japan. And I think it's so useful in Indonesia too. And this is, I think, is so the starting point of Japanese modernization and imperial expansion process since the Meiji period and up to the end of the Pacific War. And next slide, please. And this also just so famous posters published by the British Empire Marketing Board, just published in 1926. And this is, I think it's especially in the millennium period, namely the historian, sorry, it's his name. I can't remember. Neil Ferguson. It's so famous and so problematic dispute he caused, especially in the millennium period. He also just used his publications, the empire. He also just discussing about the empire debate in the millennium period. And this is directly reflecting the backgrounds of the end of the 19th and the early 20th centuries, what had happened in East Asian regions. And you see, this is the promotion propaganda by the British government. And in the 1926, it's just the, how can I say it, transitional moment that's the so-called the Pax Britannica was gradually declining, and the center of the Western colonial order just moving from Britain to the United States. It's just a transitional moment in the early 20th centuries. And it's just so important background. Why? The reason why the British decided to shake hands with the small Asian nations just emerging in the end of the 19th centuries. And so-called Anglo-Japanese alliance, Nichie Dome, has established. And you see, maybe I think it's the students in Indonesia also just learn about world history. And this indicates already know about that. This red inked place, region, and country is just the under the British control. So the British merchant ship safely traveled to the most important treasure of colonial India and Australia, New Zealand. And just important point is South Africa. But you see, these territories, these regions have no red painted, but the Russian southward advance in Eurasian continent, full-scale southward advance process in progress in the early 20th centuries. So that's the point why Japan succeeded to shake hands with the British Empire, and why Japan have to fight against the Russian Empire in the 1904. And these global framework, it's so useful when I give lecture, especially for the young students in our university, and also just trying to give lecture, especially for the high school students, learn history. It's so useful to understand the present international relations, to understand the reason why Russian invaded Ukraine, or what had happened in the Middle East, and other so important, difficult problems to understand. But it's difficult. But I hope, especially for the young students, they will have some key or clue to understand. And I think it's now this Greenland is the most important hotspot. And especially that President Trump also just mentioned the possibility to obtain the Greenland islands and other related problems in this territory. It's so maybe I think it's so become really hot spots in the present international relations. And next slide, please. And this also just is the first lesson for the young students in our university, in our faculty, just teaching and learn again. Once again, please learn the world history. It's so important, especially in the this is a so famous 3C policy in the 19th centuries by the British, and also another, the German 3B policy. And such kind of the 3C or 3B is so useful clue to understand the global history of imperial order in the 19th. And maybe I think it's also just useful to understand real situations and what had happened, what is happening in the present so unstable world from the global perspective. And yesterday, I have just introduced you that a Japanese wartime propaganda slogan, 3A movement, Tiga A. It's also just such kind of the term to use, especially for propagate the national policy and international policy to, especially to their own nations, and also just promoting the international society to propagate the national expansion policy in the 20th century, 19th to 20th centuries. So I think it's these characters is so important. Maybe and also some clue also just next time I want to discuss about the acronym of Jintang. Is Jintang is so popular. But what can I say? It's like and Jintang tahu itu Jintang itu ya Jintang sekarang we can buy in Indonesia. Jintang, 多分 maybe probably know the some acronym is Jenderal ini nanti turun anak negeri. Itu know about this. Yeah. It's a so famous explanation of how the Japanese tried to penetrate in the local markets in Indonesia in the pre-war period. It's just also the acronym was used by the Japanese small merchants. Later, maybe I think next time, maybe tomorrow, I want to discuss about that. Sorry, and next slide, please. And this is just try to close up the situation of East Asia. And next, please. And I'm using other cartoon. I have just introduced the cartoon painted by the French cartoonist Bigot. He's so famous to learn about the Japanese society in the end of the 19th and the 20th centuries from the eye of the foreign cartoonist. It's so useful to describe the situation of Japanese common people's daily life, and also just reflecting the international situations on the eve of the Russo-Japanese War. And this is the Dutch viewpoint of the 19th, and this is just the early 20th century. It's just a turning point of the colonial world order, and gradually, but drastically changing from a dog-eat-dog world to ethical imperialist world of 20th centuries. And this is, I have just clipped from the Dutch historical book. It's just published in 1994. And this painting is just especially for the book for the little kids in the Netherlands. And also just to spread over in the colonial period in Indonesia, I think. And this is just so direct propagation by the Dutch. Now, in the early 20th century, the Dutch government tried to reorientate to ethical policy and debt of honor. We have to return to the Indonesian people. But most important is because we are staying in Indonesia and protecting the Indonesian people. Indonesian could safely live, and they could continue to walk to the world of progress. And now you see the sun rising in Indonesia. And we, the Dutch, is protecting you, the Indonesian people. It's a so great propaganda message we can find. And also this cartoon, also so famous. This is just introduced to the Japanese leaders by Nagazumi Akira sensei. It's so, since then, this is so famous cartoon. Look, the pretty baby is waking. And don't worry, little baby, you are protecting by the old general and doctor. What's wonderful, the East India is awaking. This just indicates. And this also just a strong message. We, the Dutch people, we, the Dutch nation, should keep our colony and protect and guide them to the civilization. This is a so strong message. And next, please. And this also just I have used in Japan to explain, to illustrate the situation in Indonesia, situations that Dutch capital penetration in progress, especially since the 1840 to 60s, 70s. And I think it's around this period is a turning point. And also just maybe since then, 1871, 2, 3, 73 to 4 is a interlude of data. And before the 1903 to 4 is this data not include only just in Java and Madura, just include. But since then, to what should I say? The regional revolts, peasant revolts already ended. And especially Aceh Oro or Aceh, Perang Aceh just ended, conquered by the Dutch army. And since then, the Netherlands, India, it's a drastically growing the production of main agricultural products, plantation products. It's drastically growing. And please return one slide before this slide. And just the period in the early 20th centuries, just after the conquest of Aceh region and inclusion to the Netherlands in this territory, it's just the beginning, especially for the Dutch. It's just a growing, the beginning of the new age of our glorious expansion and development in Dutch East Indies. And this also just indicating. And please, next slide. Next, please. And this also just reflecting this drastically growing, the growing production, just directly reflecting the Dutch interest in the Dutch East Indies. And this declines the First World War, and this is just effects of the Great Depression in the pre-war period. And this data stopped in the 1938, I think. Yes, this is the beginning. The bro, it's break of that's the Second World War. That's when the mother country of the Netherlands just invaded and under the German occupation in Netherlands. And the Dutch government escaped from Netherlands and moved to London in exile. And in this period, no data in the Dutch authorities. But this real situation directly reflected, I think it's such cartoons I have just introduced. And in our faculty, I'm trying to use usually just using these data. But I want to add other cartoons to for better understanding of the situations from the various viewpoints. And next slide, please. And this is from the Japanese viewpoint. From Japan, and Japanese looked Indonesia and Southeast Asia in the pre-war period. And maybe I think it's these kind of the pre-war history. I think I think how about such kind of the photographs or data? Have you ever see or this? Maybe I want to introduce the historical materials. This is just from the publication of Jakarta Tomonokai. It's just the publication by the friendship associations who have experienced to stay in the pre-war and wartime Indonesia. They have just organized the Yayasan Kesahabatan and just published this memory of the East India in the pre-war period. And this Otomo, maybe I think it's other occasions. I want to just introduce and discuss several historical materials not known much among the students in Japan. And also, I think it's I'm not sure for the Indonesian students, but this is I brought the photographs of Otomo Shintaro documents this time. So I hope during my lecture, I want to introduce other photographs relating to this Otomo Shintaro's success story in the pre-war Indonesia. And he's just a hawker, a little merchant, just came to Indonesia just after the Russo-Japanese War. And the First World War, it just decided to find business chance in Indonesia and come to Indonesia and just began as a hawker and walk around the many places in Java. And finally succeeded to department store in Tegal in 1924. And this is a pre-war period Japanese success story, 10s to 20s. But this is the unsuccessful tragedy for the Japanese young women. I think it's, the Karayuki-san. And I think it's possible. The Japanese have two phases in the pre-war Indonesia and Southeast Asia. This is I think this is I suppose this indicates the face of the honorable white or 名誉白人 wannabe. It's just a case in the pre-war period. And another, this Karayuki-san's tombstone, this is only just the signature. And there's no name. And many little tombstones still exist in Singapore. And these kinds of the untold story, I think it's around the 1970s to 80s. The Japanese who have experienced and have so much experienced in the pre-war and wartime, Indonesia and other Southeast Asian countries still living. And it's possible, especially 1980s to 90s. Almost 30 years ago, 40 years, when I was a young student. That's just first trip to the foreign country is just Indonesia. And then when I visit Indonesia and walk around the night market, especially in Yogyakarta, I just remember it's a Jalan Malioboro. When I walk around the street, the one old man I have just met, and he called me in Japanese. And I was so surprised why Indonesian old man speak Japanese. I have not learned about the history in Japan Indonesia relations. Then I was so young, and he just sang the song of Gunkan Machi and other old song, wartime song. Especially for me, he sang. And I was so surprised why the Indonesian old men know such old military songs and so. And it's just the beginning, the reason why I decided to study. And if possible, wanna be the professor in university. And fortunately, I have just become as a professor in local university in Japan, in Kyushu, and still trying to teach the real situation of the Japanese in pre-war, wartime, and also in post-war Indonesia and other Southeast Asian countries. And just continue to study firstly in university in Japan, and college school, worked as a research associate in the institute. And after that, to study in the Netherlands. But this is so bitter memory I have experienced, I have memorized when I stayed and study in the Netherlands. It's just 2000. It's the both nations of Japanese and the Dutch just celebrating the 400 years friendship. Of Dutch and Japanese relations since the Dutch established the warehouse in Nagasaki. Since then, even after the Edo period, the Dutch and Japanese is a so friendly situations established. But my main topic is the just study why Dutch lost their colonies. My main concern is the uh, Indonesian experiences and relations with the Japanese, uh, especially just shedding light on the wartime and post-war period. And I've just tried to do some field work and interview with Indonesian and also for the Dutch people. But some Dutch people who survived the Japanese occupation period, and many of them must return to their homeland of Netherlands because they said because the cruel Japanese soldiers come to Indonesia, our colony, and because of that, our father and mother have horrible experiences in the Yapen camp. And after that, because the Japanese established some of them then used to say it's just the Republic of Indonesia is the puppet state of the Japanese military, fascist. I never intend to criticize the Dutch attitude. It's only just some people's memory. And when I was just studying, I have so much stress and other serious problem happened in the background of 400 years Dutch and Japanese friendship. It's just in the hot point. I was staying in Holland, and I was so young, and I was so naive. It's so difficult frustrations I have faced. But now, I really appreciate to have chance to study in Netherlands in the end of that many horrible Japanese occupations and unforgettable war of independence in the post-war Indonesia. I was so young and I was so naive. I have so much frustrations. But I have got so much experiences and leads to the present moment. I want to share the historical journey of my own selves other old scholars of Japanese. Awetnya masih muda, tapi saya sudah tua. Ano, sorry. Then, so, especially in this occasion, I want to share my own experiences and to share the process of aftermath of I think is when I started the Indonesian study. It's just I think it's I remembered that Lima Typhoon, Indonesia, Merdeka, is 50 years celebration of Indonesian independence. It's so 1995, I think. It's just my start point as a research associate in university in Tokyo. Since then, I have been sometime I lost my way and I was so frustrated, but never give up and to continue to study my research. And I really appreciate and saya mengucapkan terima kasih banyak to give such great occasion to have and to give lectures and to have the occasion to discuss the Japan and the Indonesian relations for the Indonesian students. Sorry, I have to back the main track of this. Please next 5 minutes. And this is so important. Another point is this percentage of the Japanese and Dutch products occupying the total amount of imports of pre-war Indonesia, the Dutch East Indies. It's so interesting data just indicates. This is just indicating the share of Japanese and Dutch products in Indonesian market in the pre-war period. This means that Dutch colonies marketing share just indicates, in the pre-war period, Indonesia was the colony of the Dutch, but in the 1930s, this is a turning point of the pre-war period. Just after the Russo-Japanese War, 1905, Japanese products share in the Indonesian market just only 1.2%. And contrary, the Holland, it's just shared 31%. It's clear because Indonesia was the colony of the Netherlands. But what's happening through the period of the early 20th centuries? And maybe I think one point is just the impact of the First World War. When the First World War or the European countries under the fire in the First World War, many fabrics under the war just try to concentrate on the total war effort in Europe. So this means the Indonesian market, it's impossible to export the products from Europe. There happened the vacuum of the market just created. So the Japanese business circle found so good big chance to Indonesian and other Southeast Asian market in the First World War period. And Dutch share in the Indonesian markets gradually declining, and the Japanese export drastically growing around the 1930s. And another point, this is a turning point of another aspect. It's just reflecting the effects of Sino-Japanese War or Nikkyu Senso. And later, I want to discuss about the Harimao story in the pre-war and wartime period. It's just created by the Japanese army. The mythos of Japanese hero who supported the Japanese military operations and also just promoted the Malay peoples during the Pacific War. Later, I want to introduce about the Harimao or Harimao's real story and how the Japanese military created the mythos of Harimao. But this just indicates when Japan invaded China in the 1930s, the Chinese people boycotted Japanese products in China. So the Japanese business circle faced so serious problems. Where can we sell our products? So the Japanese business circle decided to change the target of Japanese products. It's just Indonesia. In the pre-war period around 1930s. And this just indicated drastically growing 31%. It's a so interesting situations, totally reversed the Dutch and the Japanese position in the pre-war Indonesian market. And I think this also reflected his success story of merchants, businessman, Japanese businessman who succeeded his business in pre-war Indonesia. And dark side of the Japanese penetration into Indonesia would be just reflecting the tragedy of Karaoke-san's story. I think this topic already studied in Indonesian university, I think. So I hope I can help the Indonesian students to study. Maybe I think it's these kind of the materials is now declining and disappeared because the library archives don't want to keep these materials. They are just trying to digitalize, but so much amount of these paper documents, it's difficult to keep the share space in the library and archives. But almost 80 years after the Pacific War, many old archives, documents, and memoirs, and also just photographs is now forgotten among the Japanese society. I think it's such kind of the situations. I think it's in Indonesia. I think it's you, the Indonesian students, also just facing these problems. So, if possible, I want to share the informations and how should we do for the future generations to keep these memories and to keep and hand over to the future generations. I think this occasion would contribute the first and the next step to the cooperation Japan of historians and scholars. So next, please. Sorry. And this is also just I have just taken from the collection of Otomo Shintaro relating documents. And I have just introduced. This is the Hawker's Toko Japan. Namanya Toko Japan. And firstly, 1911s just started as a little hawker. And after that, he succeeded to have small stores into Toko Japan, S Otomo. And you see, this is the signage of Jintang. And tadi saya bicara tentang apa ya akronim of Jintang is Jenderal ini nanti turun anak negeri. It's just also just propagation of the Japanese Toko Japan's advertisement. And Otomo Shintaro, he wears the white suit with colonial helmet as a first class nations. But some other Toko Japan memakai a military uniform to walk around to sell their products like this, where the military uniform is just also indicating it's just a propaganda of the Japanese soldiers and the generals. It's just symbolizes the first class nations and the strong army. We defeated the white empire of Russia. It's just also the promotion among the Toko Japan in the pre-war period. And Otomo Shintaro's success story just began with a small focus and gradually develop his business and finally saw big department stores in Tegal in 1936. And you see, I have just shown you. Please go back to one slide. Oh, go back one slide, please. Mundur satu. Mundur. Yeah, ini. Ini just indicating Otomo's success story, just reflecting this data. And I think it's I think you, the Indonesian students, already learn why Dutch merchants allowed to import Japanese products. It's just a so strong rival of the Dutch products. But why the Dutch colonial authority allowed to accept the import from Japan? It's just, that now today, in the post-war period, made in Japan, just to indicate the quality and the price both is so, both of both price and quality of products is a very high. But in the pre-war period, and also in the post-war, just after the war, made in Japan never indicate the good quality. They just manufactured in western parts of Japan and exported from port of Kobe and exported to Indonesia. Cheap but low quality. It's just made in Japan's me in the pre-war period. But for the local people in the Dutch colony, it's so useful for the Dutch business circle because the low price products help their local people's daily life. The Dutch business circle didn't need to raise the salary of the local people. It's just because the Dutch authority allowed to import low price Japanese products. Its main target is the local people in Indonesia. And I think it's just a reality of the free war Japanese in Southeast Asia, I think. And next, please. And next. So I think it's I have just introduced from the viewpoints the situation of pre-war colonial society in Indonesia from the viewpoints of the Dutch and also from the viewpoint of the Japanese I have indicated. And this is I think this is the model of the Japanese regional order wanted to establish so-called the Greater East Asian co-prosperity spheres. But its model, some scholars just pointed out, it's just to learn much from the Chinese world order. It's just peak would be the 18th century China in Qing dynasty, when, according to the emperor's view of the regional order in Asia, the center of the world is the palace where the Chinese emperor stayed. Is the center of the world. That means that the Chonghua, Chuka, is the center of the civilization. And this point is the most important pivot of the world. And this point was the center of the world and core of the civilization. And this point is the most civilized and when far from the center, it's uncivilized, barbarian. And Japan decided to leave from this Chinese world order since the Edo period. I think it's these historical problems. I think you, the Indonesian students, already learned in high school, I think. And for the Japanese, this is the order system. Would be Japan also just learned from China and just tried to create new world order in the 19th and the 20th centuries. And next, please. And this I have already introduced yesterday. This is the Japanese world order in the 20th centuries, since the Japan opened the door for the foreign countries and decided to proceed to enter the Western world order and decided to leave out from please mundur slide satu. Yeah, just wanted to leave from the Chinese world order. And I think it's you have already learned Japan decided to integrate, separate from Chinese world order with the Sino-Japanese War. Officially, Japan integrates the Korean Peninsula into Japanese colony. And Ryukyu also just integrates as Okinawa prefecture. And the Dutch, the British just tried to integrate, to cut and separate the Burma and integrate it into Indian colony. And Vietnam is just aftermath of the Sino-French War in the 19th centuries, just separate from the Chinese world orders and integrate into the French colony into China. And Japan already lived out from the Chinese world order. And next slide, please. And Japan and some scholars, and I just mentioned, and many scholars already discussed Japan's concept, the core and the pivot of the new Asian world order would be Tokyo. And Japan established the Empire of Japan, just integrated in Hokkaido and Ezochi as a Hokkaido, and Ryukyu Kingdom just integrated into the Japanese territory. And after Sino-Japanese War, Japan obtained Formosa and integrated into the Japanese as a Japanese colony. And just after that, and Korea also just formally Japan declared integrated it into Japanese territory. And this map published in 1930s, I think, is also just painted in red ink. It's a Japanese territory. And Tsushima and southern parts of Sakhalin is just Japan obtained after the Russo-Japanese War. And just painted in red islands, ex-German territory. But now today, only a little number of the Japanese young students never known. Just up to the end of the Pacific War, these islands occupied and colonized by the Japanese government. Only a little number of people, especially among the young generations, never know. But this is it as a so-called Greater East Asian co-prosperity sphere. And next, please. And this is China, Manchuria, and these the framework of the so-called Greater East Asian co-prosperity sphere. And next, please. And as I have already introduced you yesterday, this is my idea of the Japanese world order in Asia. Japan tried to establish and expand the territory of Asia. And finally, Japan invaded to Southeast Asia. And other cases, I want to discuss about the Ainu and Ryukyu problems in historically, and also the present problems I want to discuss. And next, please. And this is it. I want to just mainly introduce you. Sorry, I have so much time to use other background explanations. And this is the main topic I want to introduce you. And this is just maybe I think is you have already learned the pre-war Japanese policy debate. We, the Japanese nation, what's the direction we, the Japanese nation, proceed for our nation survival? And the one is northward. Our nation should proceed to northward to Chinese continent. And furthermore, northeastern parts of China or Manchukuo establishment and expanding the occupied territory to mainland China, and also, if possible, expand to Siberia, and so. And this is just indicating Norakuro is a so popular cartoon in the pre-war period. Do you know Norakuro? It's just a homeless dog's success story in the dog army in pre-war Japan, and just reflecting the real situations in the pre-war Japan and how the government and the military look the Chinese continent directly reflecting, I think. And this is just indicating when Norakuro just retired from the Fierce Dog Army, he decided to become the businessman, to develop the natural resources in Chinese continent. And he just shouted when he decided to go to Chinese continent, he shouted, growing nation, brilliant constructions, and great my destiny to promote northward and to develop and get big chance in the continent. And he's just also just shouting, oh, continents, unlimited new heaven and earth, and expanding dream. This is so directly reflecting the public feeling in the 1930s to 40s, even after the Great Depression. Then the Japanese public tried to find exit from the Great Depression. Even in domestic Japan, we have so much problem. But we can get so big chance if we decided to go to foreign country as an immigrant. I think some Indonesian students have so interested in the present situations of immigration problems between Japan and other Asian countries, and also in Japan, so much big problems. Later, I want to discuss if possible. But in the pre-war period, so large number of the Japanese decided to get out from Japan and tried to get chance in the foreign countries, including Indonesia and other Asian territories. And this Norakuro story, just reflecting, in my opinion, it's a good textbook for the Japanese little kids. And this cartoon also just indicating that when Norakuro just first occasion to meet his good friend of name is a Congo or Diamond. And Norakuro says, sorry, what is your name? I'm a newcomer to this place. I have no friends. And Kongo-kun just mentioned, my name is Kongo. I'm from Peninsula. This means the Korean Peninsula already integrated into the Japanese territory then. And just or comrades from the peninsula, good to see you. What do you want to do to come to the continent? And this is the first moment Norakuro just arrived in Chinese continent. And this just indicating that Norakuro's, after the retirement from the army, and this is the backside story of Norakuro. Norakuro was usually criticized by the scholars and the public because Norakuro was just to propagate the Japanese army's propaganda and promoted Japanese military expansion into Chinese continent. But if we tried to research what really happened in Japan, but real situation is different. Norakuro, the army authority didn't like such weak, naive, not smart little dog soldier. So the author of this cartoon, Tagawa Suifo, was blamed by the army officers. And finally, Tagawa Suifo decided to end this Norakuro story. And this is the final story of Norakuro. But this also just reflecting the Japanese sentiment, Japanese common people's sentiment and dream and little hope to survive, to get big chance in Chinese continent, just reflecting. And this is another story of southwards. Maybe I think it's relating to the Boken Dankichi or Adventurer Dankichi. This also just reflected the Japanese stereotype of the people in South Sea Islands. I think it's also just including the Southeast Asian people. And later, I want to introduce the Mosra film in the post-war period. I think such kind of the Japanese old-fashioned stereotype of the indigenous people in Southeast Asia also just to continue to keep among the Japanese public, in my opinion. But this is another story. And next, please. And this, I have already mentioned, this is the first moment when Norakuro retired and just decided to try to get big business chance in Chinese continent, just reflecting these illustration of encounter of Japanese and Korean nations in China. And these kinds of the ideas, explanations, I think it's possible. This is the pre-war Japanese propaganda slogan to establish the so-called co-prosperity sphere. Let's unite the Asian nations to promote the construction of Great East Asian co-prosperity sphere. And Japan just established so important five nations corporations: Japanese, Manchurian, Korean, Han Chinese, and Mongolian. This is a so notorious slogan in the pre-war and wartime. Japanese policy in Asia. And next, please. But such kind of the Japanese propagation, unfortunately, Norakuro just reflected directly. And when Norakuro just retired from the Fierstock army, and this just mentions, I have just translated into English without our protectorate. Pigs, sheep, and goats countries are eaten up by the bears country soon. You should protect them. And I have already introduced this is the bear, just symbolized the Russian and next, please. And also just this Norakuro cartoon just indicated five nations. And this black and white dog is Norakuro. This means Japanese. And this white black spot dog just means Korean. And maybe three animals, pig might be Han Chinese, and goat and sheep might symbolize the Manchurian and Mongolian. And this means that directly reflected your Japanese policy in the Chinese continent in the pre-war and wartime period. And where is coming to this point is the five nations co-prosperity spheres just coming there and just join me and take to join the fish, to join fishing, he claimed. But Norakuro rejected. No, you don't. You have your own pond. And we are just mentioned, whispered. If without Norakuro, it's possible. I can take all. And this is also just my opinion. The reason why I just introduced you this Norakuro cartoon to understand the real situations among the Japanese little kids, how they learn about the Japanese national policy in the pre-war and wartime period in Chinese continent, just promoting, supports the northward advance movement. And next, please. And this also just mentioned five nations, just directly indicating. And next, please. And this is also just interesting clipping, I think. It's directly indicating the typical characters, what the Japanese imagined as a five nations characters. And goat, sheep, and dog, pig, just discussing, talking with each other. And goats, sheep, and pig. It's I ask you to read later. I want to share this slide. And the next piece. And this also just reflecting the Japanese stereotype of this in pre-war and wartime period. And next, please. And this is the Adventure Dankichi's episode. This also just, especially for the little Japanese kids, so popular cartoons and books in the pre-war period. And according to some scholars, this Boken Dankichi, or Adventure Dankichi's story, just became the good textbook to explain how the Japanese government and military succeeded to manage the colonization and sapiens people and guide them and lead them to the civilization is. And this is the reality of Japanese colonial management in the pre-war period. The Japan just established the Japanese temple, and the Dankichi also just introduced Japanese religion or manner of pre-war Japan, just bowing and adore to the rising sun. And I think it's in Indonesia during the Japanese occupation, especially so a notorious episode. The Japanese military authority forced the Indonesian people to adore the direction of imperial palace in Tokyo. It's so problematic. It's so serious problems just caused during the Pacific War in Indonesia, I remember. But Dankichi just promoting this style of the Japanese. But I think it's this already mentioned by other scholars. No, Dankichi is just like other indigenous people, half naked. But most important difference should be he wear the spatu than wristwatch. This is the symbol of civilization. And this meant Dankichi is a symbol of the civilizations. And this also meant Dankichi was civilized. And as a king who guides them and lead to the civilization. And in the real, just it's the promotion of the South Sea Islands leads to the Japanese civilized societies. Dankichi also established the shrine. And next slide, please. And this is, I have just clips from the book of advertisements, propagation, just published by the South Sea Islands Agency, just under the direct control of the Japanese cabinet in the pre-war period, Nanyocho. And Nanyocho just continued even after leaving the League of Nations. Japanese government decided to leave out from the League of Nations. But this is the League of Nations mandate. If the Japanese government decided to leave from the League of Nations, it's logical to return this territory to the League of Nations. But the Japanese government never returned to the League of Nations, just continue to control and colonize. And this just established this propaganda book just established in 1930s, I think. And this is a so great promotion of the success story of Japanese colonial management, directly reflecting this is the before the Japanese colonial management, and this is just after the colonial management. Before and after, in the same this propaganda book, we can find. And next, please. And Dankichi's story also reflected the real situation. Japan just established so big post office in Yap Islands, and Dankichi also established post office in the South Sea Islands, and just established the railway. And in the reality, it never happened. In the South Sea Islands started to form the military forces. But this is also already mentioned by other scholars. The indigenous people in South Sea Islands, they have no name, only just call, only just as a number. It's also just some kind of the Japanese stereotype of unknown, anonymous indigenous people's image. And my question, such kind of the Japanese stereotype, how about its continuity or discontinuity in the post-war period? And next day, I want to just to introduce you the post-war, wartime and post-war situations. Just shedding light on the Harimao story, just shedding light on the pre-war wartime situations, and Mosra, just reflecting the post-war Japanese stereotype image of South Sea Islands, I think. And sorry, sudah lewat.
Tidak apa-apa, Sensei.
Maaf.
Tidak apa-apa, Sensei. Hai, sesumai no koto. Arigatou gozaimasu. Hai, gimana teman-teman? Ini kita ngebahas dari zaman kolonial ya. Kalau kita lihat dari ada dua jalur, awalnya Sensei ngeceritain tentang antara Jerman sama British. Jadi ada jalur British dan jalur Jerman, kayak C3 itu British, B3 itu untuk di Jerman. Jadi kayak ke India dan sebagainya. Tapi lihatnya dari city-nya, bukan dari negaranya gitu. Kayak Kairo dan sebagainya. Jadi di sana juga ada propaganda. Jadi Jepang itu kalau kita ingat-ingat lagi pelajaran sejarah Jepang mungkin udah dibahas ya. Kalau misalnya Jepang itu waktu pas zaman Sankoku dia menutup diri hanya terbuka dengan Dutch atau Belanda. Dari sebenarnya kan Belanda juga hanya sebagai perusahaan ya. Jadi ada di hanya Jepang, Kyushu, Nagasaki dan sekitarnya. Jadi hanya di situ aja. Nah, disitulah proses belajarnya Jepang. Kenapa dia arahnya tuh ke selatan. Jadi ada dua, selatan sama yang northnya. Itu tuh ke Mongolia, ke Mercusuar dan sebagainya. Nah, yang kalau selatan berarti dia di ASEAN Tenggara. Nah, di situ bisa dilihat. Kalau ingat waktu zaman kecil ya milenial ya, kalau yang Gen Z mungkin nggak tahu ya, Mama Yukero, ada anime kayak gitu. Tapi itu Australia ya. Tapi pas kita lihat di sini, oh ternyata Indonesia juga digambarkan seperti hitam, terus pakai baju apa cuma rok doang, yang kayak Irian Jaya ya, gitu kayak Papua. Dari situ kita bisa lihat propaganda ternyata Jepang itu menganggap Asia Tenggara itu seperti peradabannya rendah dan sebagainya bisa kita lihat di sana. Lalu kita bisa ada tanggapannya ke Bu Susi.
Ya, hmm, baik, terima kasih. Saya mohon maaf ya tadi saya sebenarnya bergabungnya mungkin sekitar baru jam 2 ya. Jadi mungkin bagian awalnya skip kita terlewatkan ya. Tapi bagian terakhir setelah jam 2 lewat gitu saya ikuti. Saya kira ya saya kalau kami di Indonesia pendidikan sejarah Jepang gitu ya. Benar-benar setelah saya mendengar pemaparan Yamazaki Sensei itu ada mungkin bagian-bagian yang penting tapi skip gitu ya, terutama bagi kami yang mengajar sejarah Jepang gitu ya. Jadi setelah restorasi Meiji kan biasanya di gambaran Jepang itu maju pesat gitu ya, westernisasi, membangun industri dan sebagainya. Tapi ada satu sisi yang kira terlupakan ya, yaitu ekspansi ke luar negeri ya. Ini ada yang menarik, jadi waktu tahun Taisho gitu, tahun 1920-an ada satu Ryukoka gitu ya, lagu yang hits gitu, lagu yang populer ya. Sekarang pun kalau nggak salah di YouTube tuh masih ada. Saserai no Tabi ya kalau nggak salah ya. Itu syairnya, liriknya itu ya, kita wa Siberia, Minami wa Jawa gitu ya. Jadi laki-laki Jepang yang sejati gitu ya itu harus merantau gitu sama mirip mungkin miripnya sama orang Minang gitu ya laki-laki kan nggak boleh tetap tinggal di rumah kalau udah dewasa harus merantau gitu ya ke utara paling jauh sampai ke Siberia ke selatan paling jauh sampai ke Jawa ke Pulau Jawa ya. Pulau Jawa itu mungkin ada kesan yang misterius sebagai orang Jepang di zaman itu. Bahkan sekarang juga ya, yang pernah tinggal di Jepang mungkin tahu ada itu kare yang diproduksi pabrikan ya. Jadi tinggal dicelupin air, direbus gitu. Setelah itu bungkusannya dibuka udah bisa disajikan itu ya. Kare, tapi namanya Jawa kare. Padahal di Jawa kan nggak ada kare ya. Jadi bagi orang Jepang, Jawa itu something misterius gitu. Negeri antah berantah yang misterius ya seperti itu. Terus ini ya, mungkin jadi teman-teman yang hadir hari ini jadi mungkin bisa dapat gambaran yang lebih jelas ya dari secara visual gitu ya. Jepang itu sebelum Perang Dunia Kedua, jauh sebelum Perang Dunia Kedua ya, setelah Restorasi Meiji itu memang tren zaman, semangat zamannya adalah ekspansi. Ekspansi itu untuk berdagang. Sebenarnya ekspansi itu pertama memang didesak gitu oleh negara-negara Eropa dan Amerika. Kedua sebenarnya Jepang itu setelah Restorasi Meiji itu sebenarnya juga kebijakan nasional itu meniru gitu ya negara-negara Eropa dan Amerika aja seperti Belanda punya bukan perusahaan dagang gitu ya, maksudnya udah bangkrut sih waktu itu ya. Kemudian Inggris ya berjaya di seluruh dunia karena dagang. Jadi Jepang juga harus mengikuti. Jadi dari mereka yang perusahaan besar sampai orang yang ibaratnya perantau gitu, TKCG gitu, itu banyak sekali yang merantau gitu. Waktu itu ada juga slogan tuh Nambe itu Nanyo. Nan itu kan selatan kan. Nambe itu Amerika Selatan, artinya Amerika Latin itu ya. Satu lagi Nanyo. Karena waktu itu kan kawasan Asia Tenggara itu masih jajahan negara-negara Barat, ya. Nama negara belum ada. Pokoknya ada di selatan, yo kan Nanda. Yo itu karena di tengah laut ada pulau-pulau gitu ya, jadi Nanyo. Pokoknya mana aja lah ya. Kemudian kan dibagikan juga, Uchi Nanyo, Soto Nanyo. Jadi dari Papua ke sananya ya, ke sebelah timurnya itu dulu di itu jajahannya Jerman, karena Jerman kalah dalam Perang Dunia Pertama dan Jepang berada di pihak yang menang. Nah itu akhirnya dicampur semua. Nah, kemudian mungkin satu poin lagi yang penting adalah belakang ini karena masalah ini ya tenaga kerja Indonesia di Jepang itu ada berita banyak sekali berita-berita miring yang seperti diskriminasi. Kemudian mungkin publik Indonesia tuh menganggap oh langsung mencap gitu ya. Oh orang Jepang tuh diskriminasi terhadap orang Indonesia. Padahal itu kalau kita telusuri sejarah gitu ya, ini sebenarnya by policy ya. Jadi ketika pasar restorasi Meiji itu pemerintah memang juga mendorong gitu ya kampanye supaya rakyat Jepang merantau ke luar negeri mau ngapain aja terserah gitu ya. Pokoknya cari nafkah di luar negeri. Nah di situ memang harus digambarkan ini ya semacam posisi yang superior ya. Orang Jepang lebih superior dibandingkan dengan orang-orang lokal.
Sensei Mas.
Ya, jadi kan untuk anak-anak ya, anak-anak itu dahsyat ya. Jadi kalau sejak kecil apalagi secara visual gitu kan. Jadi visual itu kan dampaknya dahsyat ya. Jadi Nanyo no Hitobito itu hitam kemudian kecil gitu ya. Entah kecil karena kurang gizi atau gimana, kemudian mungkin bodoh gitu ya. Jadi kemudian digambarkan seperti binatang gitu kan. Jadi dari situ sudah ditanam pemahaman seperti itu. Setelah anak-anaknya sudah dewasa, istilah kan ada istilah unlearn gitu kan, membuang apa yang sudah ditanamkan itu sulit ya. Kemudian kemudian ada kemungkinan memang diceritakan turun-temurun ke anak-anak mereka. Jadi ini propaganda kan, propaganda yang dilakukan sebelum Perang Dunia Kedua ini jauh sebelum Perang Dunia Kedua itu sampai sekarang pun dampaknya akan masih ada gitu ya. Jadi dalam benak orang Jepang, bagaimana persepsi mereka terhadap orang-orang Asia Tenggara? Saya kira orang Jepang pada umumnya tidak bisa membedakan Indonesia sama Filipina itu bedanya apa ya, atau Indonesia dengan Malaysia itu bedanya apa? Ya kita sendiri saya kira juga susah membedakan antara Indonesia dengan Malaysia. Jadi mereka tuh orang Jepang tuh masih gelondongan gitu menganggap oh Tona Asia gitu, Nanyo dulu namanya Nanyo sekarang Asia Tenggara, Tona Asia tuh orang-orangnya seperti ini ya. Itu sih saya kira ini dengan belajar sejarah ini banyak memberikan pemahaman kepada kita. Kalau sekarang mungkin publik Jepang itu memandang kita gitu yang dari Asia Tenggara dari Indonesia itu seperti ini. Itu bukan karena pada dasarnya orang Jepang itu rasis gitu ya. Tapi memang ini propaganda itu memang sangat dahsyat. Saya kira mungkin poin ini juga sebenarnya jadi catatan untuk saya ya nanti untuk mata kuliah sejarah kita, sejarah Jepang kita ke depan. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Sensei atas tanggapannya. Oke, untuk teman-teman ada yang mau ditanyakan di sini mengenai propaganda. Kita mungkin karena nggak ada JF ya, jadi ini bisa kita ceritakan kalau ini tuh propaganda Jepang dari zaman dahulu kala sampai hingga sekarang. Mungkin sekarang ya soft powernya, tapi kita bisa ngelihat kalau misalnya Jepang juga orang Indonesia memegang, oh Jepang itu nganggap kita seperti ini, seperti propaganda yang Momotaro dan komik yang ini. Padahal itu cuma pemerintahnya aja, masyarakatnya enggak. Jadi kita jangan ambil eh,
Ya.
eh, arahnya itu propagandanya aja, tapi bisa meneliti ya soal ini dari sisi masyarakatnya gitu. Jadi ini pemerintah, kita bisa lihat masyarakatnya. Apakah teman-teman di sini di ruangan aula KWJ ada yang saya? Hai.
はい、先生、ご説明ありがとうございます。ロルナと申します。今は1年生ですね。1年生です。ちょっと黒猫じゃなくて、なんだっけ野良黒、すみません。野良黒について質問があります。先ほどの野良猫じゃない、野良黒の、イラストはとても可愛いと思います。可愛いなんですが、でも中身は、それから、セリフも、なんか、プロパガンダですよね。で、ちょっと質問は、実はですね、who was the target audience? Really? And then, なんか、年齢的には何歳から何歳までですか？はい、ご説明。ご質問が以上です。ありがとうございます。
Hai, terima kasih. Kalau bisanya itu tolong apa ya?
tolong
Slide.
PDF-nya tadi.
Ya,
Oke.
mungkin menurunkan di atasnya itu. Ya, mungkin ini. Itu ini apa ya namanya itu Shonen Club. Itu nama majalah. majalah khususnya untuk anak-anak.
Seperti Shonen Jump ya Sensei ya.
Shonen itu saya
Udah.
kira itu kira-kira sekolah dasar sebelum perang. Maka dalam bahasa Jepangnya itu Jinjo Shogakko. Itu kira-kira umur umur 7 sampai 10 kira-kira ya. Maka itu shonen. Dan ini Norakuro dan Kichi itu termuat jurnal yang sama. 同じ少年クラブ、マジェラ少年クラブにはitu dua-duanya termuat dan become so.
Di chapter yang sama, di majalah yang sama, di tahun yang sama.
同じ、マジャラに連載されていて、ものすごい、great popularity, they have just achieved. だから、やっぱりスコラダッサルですね。はい。Ananya.
Jadi mungkin kalau kita bisa ngelihat di sini, targetnya itu anak-anak. Jadi kalau misalnya mungkin di zaman Showa, targetnya itu gimana cara menanamkan, oh saya hebat, Jepang itu hebat. Karena di zaman pasca perang itu kan mereka jatuh, gimana caranya menyemangatin lagi itu dari cerita-cerita seperti pahlawan. Makanya kalau kita bisa lihat manga di tahun-tahun Showa sampai Heisei itu masih kayak power girl, power boy. Nah itu mungkin agar boomer-boomer ini di zaman boomer bisa semangat untuk apa ya, lebih semangat lagi percaya diri di negaranya sendiri.
Dan mungkin itu kalau kami ingat riwayat Norakuro, riwayat Momotaro. Momotaro juga ya Pak ya, just refleksi apa ya, expectation by the adult people, including the government authority and the military. They have just expected. But I think it's tomorrow. I bring other cartoon of Norakuro, just reflecting just indicating the Norakuro, just only the propagation maneuver by the Japanese army. Why Norakuro was finally banned by the military authority? I will show you. So this means that Norakuro have so complex feeling, just reflecting the author's sentiment.
ありがとうございます。Mungkin kalau misalnya Norakuro ini refleksi, kan Jepang itu habis pasca perang 45 itu. Jadi gimana caranya pemerintah masyarakat untuk ngelihatin keluar, Jepang masih ada powernya, salah satunya dari karya-karya komik atau karikatur dan lainnya. Mungkin bisa refleksinya ke sebelah sana. Ada pertanyaan tambahan, teman-teman? Oke.
Sumimasen. Faisal Nayufari to Mushimas. I would like to ask a question in English. I want to ask a question about yesterday topics, which is the Momotaro. I mean, in the wartime era, in the wartime, Momotaro is showed that fight against the demon or Oni, but in the recent iteration of Momotaro in the like tokusatsu, like it's in the Kamen Rider Den-O and the Super Sentai Don Brothers, it portrays that um, Momotaro is befriends with the Oni. Do you think it reflect how Japan views other nation or others allies in the region? I think that's my question. Thank you.
Yeah. I've just remembered the Kamen Rider Den-O. It's a totally different image of Oni. It's a demon. I think it's if we check the further transformation process of demon Oni in the post-war period, also just reflected the society's sentiments and also just reflecting the politically correct instructions just reflected. So I think I want to check other Norakuro, sorry, and Momotaro cartoon in the post-war period. It's also just gradually change the characters of Momotaro or to adjust the post-war situation of democracy in post-war period, and also just reflecting the gender sense and other debate in post-war Japanese societies. And I think it's a Den-O. It's Den-O's Oni. It's just reflected. It's a different image of a demon in traditional Japanese societies. Oni means only just evil existence to harm the people in local community. And maybe, if possible, I want to just introduce. I'm now just introducing the monster of Kappa. You know Kappa, and Kappa also just if you come to Kyushu, it's so different faces. Kappa is just evil spirit to harm the local people. It's just some people mentions it's just vengeance against the local people. Actaga also just reflected. And Oni, demon also have, original demon have so different faces to adjust the situations. And maybe I think it's you have learned the meaning of kanji characters, Oni. It's only just contains evil meaning, but some kind of the holiness and spiritual power in proof of character of Oni. I think its original is in Chinese and also in Japanese. Oni have different various meaning. And maybe I think it's a Den-O. It's directly or indirectly reflected. We don't have to, we don't have to, sorry, jangan diskriminasi kepada demon in so harmonious society, cooperative harmony in present society. I think it's honest image is totally changed. And maybe I think it's possible. It's back to the original meaning of spirits of demon. And we can find it, and I recommend you, please come to Kyushu and please come to Saga. It's a different dance playing with mask. It's just not evil existence of a demon in local old folktale. And such kind of the original ideas and concepts just reflected in the modern Kamen Rider, Masked Rider stories. I think it's so interesting. Thank you very much.
Terima kasih Sensei penjelasannya. Mungkin ini kita baru tahu juga ternyata sebuah cerita Den-o tokusatsu aja itu maknanya dalam sekali. Itu mungkin kalau KWJ itu apa sih makna-makna yang ada di film, di sosialnya ke belakang lagi, ke sejarahnya lagi, lalu kita masukkan ke yang modernnya. Jadi kita kuliah di sini tidak hanya yang ya udah Jepang aja budayanya, enggak, kita masuk ke semuanya, bisa bandingin ke negara lain juga, tidak hanya Jepang. Jadi kalau misalnya yang di online, yang di sini yang mau masuk KWJ bisa lihat-lihat, oh gini ya ternyata KWJ seluas itu, nggak sastra lagi, mungkin image-nya sastra Jepang aja. Nah kak, bungaku dake nan desu keredomo, jitsu wa, kono, jugyo wa iro-iro no koto, benkyou shimasu desu ne. Nah, oleh karena itu teman-teman bisa cek lagi ini yang kita bahas hari ini, bisa nih ada beberapa judul buat kita kembangin lagi jadi tesis atau jadi penelitian jurnal juga, karena kita juga di GSA juga banyak programnya untuk pengembangan Japanese study juga gitu. Apa ada pertanyaan lagi teman-teman yang ada di sini? Yang di online apakah ada? Oke, Sensei. Oh, oke, teman-teman. Sensei, kyo wa mo jugyo warimasu ne. Daijoubu desho ka? Nanika mata hanashimasu ka? Besok ya, Sensei. Oke. Besok dengan tema apa, Sensei?
Pendidikan Jepang dan
Hai, wakarimashita. Jadi besok ada pendudukan Jepang di pasca perang dan pasca war Perang Dunia Kedua. Jadi besok bisa datang lagi dan on atau online. Kita bisa di jam 1 sampai jam 3. Mungkin lebih ya karena topiknya menarik. Jadi terima kasih kepada semua peserta offline maupun online yang sudah hadir di sini. Saya kembalikan ke MC. Terima kasih.
Ya, selamat siang. Terima kasih sekali lagi kami ucapkan kepada Yamazaki Sensei dengan Kak Amira sebagai moderator. Sebelum acara kami tutup, bisa foto bersama terlebih dahulu. Untuk yang offline datang di Aula KWJ hari ini, bisa maju ke depan. Ya, bisa maju ke depan untuk berfoto bersama. Baik, terima kasih. Oke. Sekali lagi terima kasih kepada Yamazaki Sensei dan kepada para peserta baik online maupun offline. Dan sampai ketemu lagi di hari ketiga besok. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.